Good evening, everyone. I'm Paul Hudd, the director of the List Visual Arts Center here at MIT, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you. And I know what a spectacularly busy week this is for all the professors and students and the researchers, so we're so glad to see everyone here. And tonight, we're here to celebrate and to congratulate Agnieszka. She helped me pronounce her name, but I still get it wrong. It's been 4 years and I still get it wrong. Who's giving two great pieces to add to our MIT's permanent art public collection. The two pieces are distinctly different, but creates one piece for Kendall Square. What looks to be abstract art is in fact portraits. And portraits of those folks at MIT and the residents and those who work in Cambridge. The abstract signatures represents an amalgam of actual signatures collected by our staff and many individuals of those folks who work and live here. And they were morphed into two distinct signatures. And we want to thank John Guttag and his excellent crew at CSAIL for figuring that out, because we had no idea how to do that, and they created an algorithm, and they had a technical know-how to help us do that. So thank you for that. Tonight, the program for this evening is Philip Corey, the Associate Provost at MIT, who oversees all the arts at MIT, will introduce Agnieszka. And then the artist will give a presentation of her practice. And then following her talk, we'll go outside and we'll all view the art in person with the artist. And one of the things that I love about working in contemporary art is that you get to actually ask the artist questions. So I hope tonight you all have many questions after the lecture and when we're viewing the art itself. Philip and MIT have been incredibly supportive of all the arts at MIT, including making sure that we continue the important Percent for Art program, and to help support all the artists who create site-specific permanent art pieces that land here on campus. And some of our recent public art, in addition to this piece, and Agnieszka was born in Poland but lives and works in New York, includes a piece by Olaf Eliasson at the Nano Building, and he was born in Denmark but lives and works in Berlin and also in Iceland. And Ursula von Riddingsvard, she was born in Germany. Her website says Germany. Okay. And lives and works in Brooklyn. That I know is a fact. So, and her massive sculpture is at the entrance of the McGovern Institute. Thank you, Laurie McGovern. And that piece is Ursula's the grandest and tallest piece to date, and we are lucky to have it. And we recently added Jeffrey Gibson's painting in the Vassar Dorm, who was born in Colorado and who is a member of the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians and is of Cherokee descent. And right here also in Kendall Square, we have the piece by Alicia Quade, who was born in Poland, but works in Berlin. Those who began the program, the Percent for Art program at MIT back in 1968, believed that creativity begets creativity, and they wanted to have our campus to be an environment that inspires the students, professors, researchers, and our visitors through architecture and art. And this newest edition will certainly inspire all those who live, work, and visit our campus. Thank you, Agnieszka, for this piece. And you continue to amaze all of us through your art. I also want to thank Sam Rausch of the Tanya Bonaktar Gallery, who was invaluable in helping us to get to us where we are today. And I also want to thank those I get the great honor of working with, Sarah O, Susie Allen, Emily Garner, Elizabeth Ponce, and Jameson Johnson, who are excellent at problem-solving skills. And you need a lot of problem-solving skills to put up these two massive pieces. And I was looking through my calendar, and it was 2018 that we presented to MIT's President Raphael Reif about this piece, who heartily agreed that this would be so exciting for the campus. So it's been an incredibly long journey, but a journey worthwhile. So I want to thank you. And with that, Philip.
It's my pleasure.
Paul has taken almost everything I was going to tell you. So I'm going to really be brief, mercifully brief, and I just want to say one thing about Agnieszka Kurant, double A. I've been rehearsing. Paul's been helping me. One thing. Paul's talked about her career briefly, about the Percent for Art program, which we're so proud of. I mean, I will say it. MIT has perhaps the most outstanding public art collection on any university campus in North America. And I'm a betting man. I'd bet probably anywhere on any university campus. And we're very proud of that. And you are lifting us yet higher. And we're grateful for that. But apart from being, raised in Lodz and educated there and in London and working in New York, as Paul said, after reading about you and thinking about you, here is what I'm going to conclude with. I've just been so impressed with the range of your intellectual interests. The more I learn about your career, how you see cultures and societies, I realize how well you fit into MIT, into our culture. MIT is about mind and hand, learning and doing, and so are you. MIT is about solving highly complex problems, local and global, and so do you. And MIT is not only about addressing these problems, but doing it through the creation of teams, working together across the various learning cultures. And I know you stand for that as solid as can be. I read this wonderful piece in the New York Times of your work, which just told me about how important working with others, not taking the credit for yourself, but sharing it with the many that work with you to do this fabulous work. You've honored us. We have two wonderful end of signature with us now on these two buildings. This building, this is the one in neon, blue neon, and then the other next door, not far away, is LED. So let me just stop there. Thank you for being with us, coming back to MIT. I know you'd been at CAST as a fellow artist in residence and so on. We're so grateful. You're one of MIT now. Whether you like it or not, you're in our family. Welcome, Agnieszka.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Paul and Philip, for this wonderful introduction. I would like to thank the entire team of MIT list, obviously Paul Haas, Susie Allen, Sarah Oh. I think that it's, I'm using this mic actually. Yes, Paul Haas, Susie Allen, Sarah Oh, Yuri Stone, with whom I worked at the beginning, and the entire MIT list staff. I would like to thank Professor John Gutak, who's also here with us today, and his PhD students, Katie Lewis, Divya Shanmugam, Jose Javier Gonzalez Ortiz. I'd like to thank Parallel Development, Will Pickering, and Mistras Company. I would like to thank, from the depths of my heart, to Sam Rausch, who's also here today, from Tanya Bonagdar Gallery, who is the director of special projects, without whom this project would just not be here. I'm profoundly grateful. Thank you, the entire Tanya Bonagdar Gallery team and Tanya Bonagdar. Thank you, earlier collaborators that I had at Tanya Bonagdar, Joel Draper, Jill Feldman, as well as Lisa Smith. Finally, thank you, my other collaborators at MIT. I would really like to extend a very profound thank you to Lila Kinney, who is here, and who was the person who invited me to first come here to meet the scientist, which resulted in me being invited to do the visiting artist at CAST. I really appreciate that, to be given a chance and to start collaborating with this wonderful community. I want to thank Stefan Halmreich, who is also here and who is a wonderful collaborator, and we've been in conversations and in collaboration for a few years now. Caroline Jones, similarly an interlocutor, and also together with Stefan, a collaborator and contributor to my upcoming book. I want to thank Adam Horowitz, Pat Paranutaporn, A.L. Perry, Ziv Epstein, Agnes Cameron, Ishan Gower, Gary Xiang, who all collaborated me on various projects during my time at MIT. And finally, I would like to thank my partner, husband, an artist and writer, John Manick, who is also here, for his constant support. Tonight is a particular day. Today, Jean-Luc Godard passed away, and I was thinking about the words that he said, that we should replace vague ideas with clear images. And I think that a lot of my work is trying to do precisely that, to discuss various ideas in philosophy and science and politics and economy, and find the ways in which I could critically address these questions. So I'm going to present some works and talk a little bit about my practice. Thank you. I would like to start by saying that my point of departure for my practice and for this project here is the phenomenon of collective intelligence. Collective intelligence is a phenomenon that happens in complex systems and living systems, in geology, in society. And I got interested in emergence and in collective intelligence because we're living in times where a lot of things seem computable, a lot of things seem predictable, and we're being constantly told by the neoliberal ideology that we can predict the future, that everything can be computed, and which actually would be a very sad thing if this was true. But in reality, there are many things that obviously cannot be computed, even with artificial intelligence. And collective intelligence is one of these phenomena. It's a phenomenon which consists in novel forms which emerge in complex systems. And these novel forms are the result of interactions between thousands or millions of molecules, of bacteria, of animals, or of humans. And so this was my point of departure for a lot of my work, and I want to show you a couple of examples of collective intelligence in nature and in society. I will very quickly go through a couple of slides. This is an organism that really inspired a lot of my projects, and among them, the End of Signature. This is Physarum polycepharum, popularly known as slime mold, which existed as diffuse separate cells, but when it's confronted with lack of water or lack of nutrients, it forms one single body and becomes collectively intelligent and is capable of going through a maze. And here we have a slime mold solving a maze. And this is an example of collective intelligence in biology. Here, a few other examples. These are colonies of bacteria which perform so-called quorum sensing or collective decision-making through the exchange of chemical signals. And in response to lack of water or nutrients, again, they can, for example, decide to kill off half of the colony if it's better for the rest of surviving cells. And they form different shapes as they kind of collectively make decisions about these societies. These are the bacteria, Penibacillus dendritiformis, that especially can be captured. These are fireflies. This is the synchronization of fireflies that blink in unison. So the male fireflies are capable of perfect synchronization. And scientists such as Stephen Strogas are studying fireflies and comparing it to certain synchronizations that happen in societies. How people over time can be in sync, and this can be observed in, for example, social movements, but also with different pacemakers or just the way that people pace their lives. These are some images of crowds. These are examples of visual crowd surveillance with the use of hydrodynamics. There's some research of several scientists, Brian Moore and Saad Ali and Mubarak Shah, who are experimenting with looking at, for example, these are images of the New York Marathon crowd, the LA political rally, and then the pilgrimage at the Hajj, pilgrims circling the Kaaba in Mecca. This is a crowd of people in Poland during the women's strike, forming the word wybór, which in Polish means choice. It's about choice that women have and against which their current government has basically introduced an almost entire ban on abortion. So there was massive social movement of women, but actually many men as well, who supported this cause. And this is a kind of light sign that they formed 3 years ago during one of the marches in Warsaw. This is an image from Reddit, from the social platform Reddit. It's a form that was collectively built by 1 million people, 1 million users of this platform, during a social experiment called The Place, where anybody who wanted to participate could put a single pixel in one color on this blank canvas, and then people started organizing themselves, and during 24 hours they built different forms, including flags, slogans like Me Too, but as well at some point they started building this black form that was later named Black Void, that resembles an organism, a virus. This is before the pandemic started, 3 years before. Now it kind of gains a different meaning. And this is another experiment on Reddit, when one of the users proposed to collectively take care of a plant. So the experiment is called Please Take Care of My Plant. And there's a robotic camera that is animated by the people who watch it, and also the decisions whether this plant that is being shown in this live broadcast, the decisions whether the plant should be watered or not are made daily by the collective intelligence of the users of this platform. Finally, this is an image from the research at the Santa Fe Institute that develops since the early 1990s different forms of computational social science, which is a relatively new branch of science applying mathematics to study of crowds and collective behavior, and, for example, migrations and development of social movements. But of course, all these technologies are very often used by corporations and by the states to monitor crowds and to survey them and to harvest them. So this is an image from like a thermal camera looking at crowds, trying to gauge the temperature of the bodies, but also to diagnose different things about people in the crowd. This brings me to the first project I want to present. I've been thinking a lot, obviously, about this phenomenon of collective intelligence, but also about the ways in which today we live in times of very different new kind of extractivism, which happens in surveillance capitalism. And this extractivism is based on the premise that the entire society became a gigantic factory of data production and exploitation, and we all became workers. And essentially, the crowds became the most important assets of digital capitalism. My other point of departure for the works I'm about to present here is the concept of plural subjectivity, which undermines the paradigm of individualism, which obviously proved catastrophic to our civilization. Climate change, extinction of species, radical inequality, and society collapse are all are products of the ideology, the paradigm of individualism. So we clearly have to abandon this logic, and that's one of the reasons why I started working with collective intelligence. On the other hand, I was thinking about this plural subjectivity and the fact that contemporary human can be seen as a polyphony of various agencies. So when we think about the microbes inside our organisms, inside our gut, the viruses impacting our neurotransmitters in our brains. And then, on the other hand, the algorithms that are optimizing our decisions, we realize that we are being hacked both from the inside and from the outside, and that actually what is a human, it's not an individual, it's a polyphony of agencies. And so that's why this plural subjectivity for me seems to be a much more apt way of talking about society today. And I was thinking about the direction in which human culture is evolving, and I'm interested in transformations of the human, the future of labor and creativity, and I wanted to capture this moment in which we are presently now, where a lot of transformations are very palpable, and we can see as they are happening in front of our eyes. And so I'm going to show you a couple of images of my works. So this is a first project that I started in 2014, titled AAI, and these are works that I crowdsourced or outsourced to another species, to colonies of living termites. So first ones you can see are in the desert in Namibia. That's when we did the first tests. I supplied, together with the biologist I collaborated with, Paul Bardunias, who was a consultant at Harvard University and works at the University of Florida. We supplied termites with vividly colored sand, gold, and crystals. And since termites are almost blind, they haven't noticed, and they just kept building. And that's what they built. And I started at some point, after 3-4 months of each colony building a separate sculpture, we take the sculptures away and then solidify it with resin and show it at various places, museums and galleries. So each of these sculptures was built by one termite colony, million termites, a couple million termites. And they look very artificial, but they're actually products of nature. Entomologists actually say that you can say something about the colony, a given colony of termites, when you look at the shapes of these mounds. You can say something how this colony is, for example, adventurous or militant or lazy or developing fast or slow. And so they become almost like cartoon characters. Actually, complexity science draws on this research from entomology to think about collective personality of social movements and communities of people. These are negative casts of these termite mounds. These are actually poured in Namibia into abandoned termite mounds. So we find abandoned mounds when the termites move from place to place. They just leave them, and then we drill a small hole in the top, and then pour hot zinc inside all the corridors that are essentially portraying afterwards the negatives of these systems. Each one is different, like a scan or a photograph. These are the works that I co-authored, on which I collaborated with my partner, John Menick, who's an artist and writer. And it was another example of crowdsourcing, except that in this case we have crowdsourced these works to the workers of the Amazon Mechanical Turk online labor platform. It's a platform started by Amazon, and it's currently employing a couple of million people around the world. What happens is that the workers are paid only $1 or less per hour. Very often they are being paid sometimes in cryptocurrencies, fractions of $1 per task. So this platform became very exploitative. The term that was used by Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, to name this type of new work was artificial intelligence, because it simulates the work of an algorithm with people as cogs in the machine. But and this is what gave the title to my series, was the Termite mounts, AAI. But in reality, these are, one could say, ghost workers in the machine. They are actually performing labor that is highly exploitative and not remunerated correctly. So these are works in which we asked different workers of Amazon Mechanical Turk to draw lines with the computer mouse, lines of any length, just lines that are more or less straight. And the way that it was programmed is that each next worker saw only a dot on the screen, and they could continue from that point, but they didn't see the work of the others. And so this became all one continuous line that is then output to like a pen plotter. And then, so each of these drawings is then an amalgamation of labor of hundreds or thousands of workers. Each line is drawn in a different country. Just imagine one can be drawn in, I don't know, Italy or Poland or the Rust Belt or in Bangladesh, and this all becomes one line. So the title of this series is Production Line. And in this case, we are looking at one image of 1,000 workers, and the other drawing is of 2,000 workers. So it's an amalgamation of labor. And what is really important is that when these works sell, the profits are redistributed among the workers, because the Amazon Mechanical Turk is using the IP addresses of the workers, so it's easy to redistribute the profits. And that's another thing that I'm interested in my work, how to use new technologies to do this redistribution of profits as a new also form, conceptual form, but also something that changes the way that works are made and function, and to essentially to siphon off the money from the art market and to redistribute it among the workers. This is the result of my collaboration with a scientist from the CSAIL lab at MIT and his students, Boris Katz, Henri Barbu, and David Mayo. So this was during my MIT visiting artist fellowship between 2018 and 2019. So in this case, we asked workers of the platform, Amazon Mechanical Turk, to submit their selfies. We used 10,000 selfies of workers, and this is what emerged, a kind of collective self-portrait of this new emerging working class. These are images from this fragment of this new form I was showing earlier of the black void from the social experiment. This is a lenticular print. And these are other works, other lenticular prints, which also portray an evolution of a form. In this case, this is a series inspired by the Princeton mathematician Niels Baricelli, who in the early 50s was working at Princeton using the ENIAC computer that was famously used to work on the atomic bomb during the day. But at night, Baricelli used it to evolve, to develop first forms of artificial life, of digital life. So he was, quote unquote, growing digital organisms, and he was making printouts every few generations, and I used the blueprints from Princeton Archive to create this lenticular print that is changing, and you can see the evolution of these forms. These are images of another social economic experiment, and the research of the economist Thomas Schelling, who already in the 1970s was aware of the fact that there are certain phenomena that cannot be studied through certain experiments that are only done on a group of 1,000 or a couple thousand people, because there are phenomena in society which only can be studied when you look at a larger scale, the long tail, so at groups over 100,000 people or around 1 million people. And so he was the first one to demonstrate how for example, societies self-segregate, but we can only observe it in this kind of study of complex systems. So that's another work entitled Artificial Society. And these are more recent works. This series is called Conversions, and these are artificial intelligence paintings. They are liquid crystal paintings executed on copper plate. And so the surface of copper is covered with the liquid crystals, and liquid crystals are very particular. It's a very particular kind of matter. So they change when we deliver electric charge and temperature change to them. So their molecules are changing, and so they change colors and forms. And so these are evolving paintings. And so you're looking at the same painting a few minutes later, and a few minutes later. This is how it evolves. And so each of these paintings is connected to an social animation called Artificial Society, which was created by harvesting opinion dynamics and changes of emotions and feelings among the members of protest movements around the globe. So I worked with computational social scientists and as well as one of the scientists and artists at MIT, Agnieszka Kurant, and I'm currently working with computational social scientists Laron Schultz and Justin Lane from the Center of Complex Systems in Kristiansand in Norway. And so these are evolving paintings that are essentially like animated by crowds of protesters around the globe. And they are a form of choreography as well as they are changing. Here another work from my current exhibition on view at Castello di Rivoli, entitled Crowd Crystal, which is a good, this piece is entitled Chemical Garden, and it's a good example of how I'm actually studying and comparing in my work crystallization of various forms from forms that emerge like here. These are metals extracted from computers, metals that are used in computers and server farms. Actually, when they are submerged in liquid glass, they produce this plant-like forms. And these are actually the same metals that were present at the beginning of life, and they just preceded life, and these forms were there before life emerged. And so the fossilized chemical gardens are very often taken for fossils of real life. And the paradox is that now the extraction of these metals obviously causes devastation to ecosystems, but the same forms gave the beginning of life. These are different close-ups of this work. And yes, a form of crystallization of coming from molecules, a form of collective intelligence again, but on a kind of molecular level. And these works are post-Fordites that are, again, forms of amalgamation of labor and fossils of labor. One thing that I'm exploring in my practice, and which the project here at MIT, to which I will very soon move, is the history of footprints, of collective footprints and individual footprints that humanity left from the beginning, starting from the handprints left in the caves, Paleolithic caves, through carbon footprints and ending with digital footprints. And as you could see with conversions, they were kind of evolving thermal footprints. And in this case, I realized that after the factories in Detroit and in many other cities that produced cars, after these factories went bankrupt and the workers were laid off, the workers started coming back to the empty factories after the production was moved to Asia, after it was outsourced elsewhere. So these workers started coming back to the factories, and they discovered this quasi-geological formation, which they named Fordite, thinking about Henry Ford, which emerged because of 100 years of spray painting cars on production lines, because the particles of paint were floating in the air and they were congealing on the skids and tracks, and they were fossilizing into these forms that look like agate stone. And so these forms of Fordite are now being circulated by workers. This is one of the ways in which they are now making money, because this is a finite resource, because there's only a certain amount of these fossilized fragments that they find at factories that can now be polished, cut, and used to produce jewelry. So they accrue in value. And so I started buying fragments of Fordite from various factories around the globe, from the workers. And I gather them together to produce these forms that has each facet comes from a different factory. And the title of this work is Post-Fordite, obviously thinking about how the contemporary political economy has changed and is now reflecting post-Fordism is based on immaterial products and no longer factory production, and mostly exploitation of entire societies. Some images from my show at Castello di Rivoli, and here are the works that I also did in collaboration recently. Collaboration with Genevieve von Petzinger, who was a paleoanthropologist, and with two computational social scientists, was Justin Lane. And so these works are based on the research of Genevieve von Petzinger, who's the author of a book, First Signs. She documented all the geometric signs at caves around the globe, various Paleolithic caves. So some of these, these are some of her photographs, and these are from 40,000 to 20,000 years old geometric signs that were largely ignored by paleontologists in favor of these beautiful cave paintings that were like realist depictions of animals. But actually these geometric signs were first attempts at human symbolic communication. So Petzinger wrote this fantastic book that analyzes these signs, because sometimes, as you can see, they form almost like, this is probably like a 20,000-year-old sentence. So it turns out that these signs repeat, and so she cataloged them, and there's 32 of them. They repeat all over in all the caves, Paleolithic caves, everywhere that she has so far. She looked at thousands of caves. And so I worked with this computational social scientist to train the machine learning algorithm, machine vision, on all these signs, and to produce new signs, kind of alternative signs, and thinking about what kind of societies, what kind of governance would we create if we created different signs. Because certainly other signs also must have circulated, but only certain ones survived, only certain ones had the power to turn into alphabets, to turn into signs we use today. And these are executed with bacterial pigments, and these pigments were produced by a bacteria that had gene mutations, with some genes inserted from corals and jellyfish. Part of my work is also documenting various knowledge systems and kind of thinking about how knowledge systems are impacting the way that we construct our ideologies. And so this is a series of maps of phantom islands where I was looking at collectively created fictions. These are images of islands that were over centuries, from the entire history of cartography. They were invented. They were observed as mirages, fata morganas, or invented most often by colonial expeditions, because very often these expeditions invented a territory to get more money from their governments. So here you can see the divisions of these phantom islands, as they are called. And so different countries claimed to be the sovereigns of these territories, although none of these territories exist. They were all invented, but there were real transactions that happened around them, real economic transactions. There was almost, one of them almost led to a war. This one, Antillia, almost led to a war between Portugal and Spain. Another example of like looking at systems of knowledge, periodic tables, where I juxtapose together building blocks of societies, which are fictions, with fictional elements and minerals in the history of literature, philosophy, cinema. This is a map of social contagions and phantom phenomena that was commissioned for the New York Times at the beginning of the pandemic. As it happens, I was already working on a map of this phenomena because I was thinking about, I was talking earlier about how today we have this ideology of neoliberalism that wants us to believe that anything can be computable, but actually social behavior, collective behavior cannot be computed. And of course, you're all aware how impossible it is to predict the results of elections. And this is precisely because human behavior is highly irrational. The way that we, for example, vote in elections, it depends on the weather on a given day, depends on what day of the week this election takes place, if the person had dinner, if they made love the previous evening, and many other factors that impact human behavior. And that's so I'm applying this kind of rational systems of knowledge, like maps or periodic tables, but to look at this complexity of human irrational human behavior. So this is, for example, a juxtaposition of 1,000 years of different social phenomena caused by fictions, from dancing manias and tarantism to laughing epidemics to phantom creature sightings, UFO sightings. As you know, obviously these come in waves, and they usually are associated with different unrest in society. So there's like some episodes, outbreaks of mass hysteria, or observations of phantom noise, where thousands of people witness one noise that actually is not there. Obviously conspiracy theories and collective delusions and so on. So I catalog them. It's like each of these works is based on 1 year of research, very often collaborating with many researchers. Some other works. This is another project of this kind, where I looked at the history of all the objects that circulated as a currency, informal currency, so not coins and not banknotes, but other objects. And this is an incredible catalog of objects that not only circulated in the history of humanity, but that also circulate in economies in crisis. For example, during now the war in Ukraine, or during the crisis in Argentina, during the martial law in Poland. And so there are various objects. Actually, the whole piece was inspired by this Tide detergent, Tide currency, that is used as a currency among petty criminals in the US, and also it can be exchanged for food stamps or sometimes for drugs. And so this is what I think is probably an exhaustive list of all the informal currencies that I consulted with many anthropologists, with Michael Tausig, David Graeber, and many other specialist historians of currency. That kind of collection has never been done. At the bottom, you can see Tootsie Rolls, candy, that were used in Argentina during the crisis in 2001, when the assets and banks were frozen and the stores started giving them instead of coins. You can see soap in the middle, animal pelts, cigarettes, cheese, chocolate, playing cards used in the 17th century in Canada. And of course, bars of salt, human heads in Borneo, and whale teeth used in Fiji. And of course, bars of salt, that was the first salary, hence the word salary and soldier. Soldiers in ancient Rome were paid with bars of salt. This is the most recent project, Map of Accidental Gods, when I'm looking at people unwittingly turned divine. It's a collaboration with writer and anthropologist Anna de la Subin, who has recently published a book of the same title. And we're looking at various characters, real characters that were turned divine, and how colonial history took advantage of local beliefs to capitalize on spirituality for political or economic gains. With the most, these are different professions of people that were deified. most famous example is Haile Selassie, an ordinary person turned into God in Jamaica and the entire Rastafari religion. But there were many, especially American generals or colonial administrators and entire cults that just emerged around them. Here is another collaboration. Earlier collaboration was one of the people who are in the audience was Ziv Epstein and was Holly Grimm, a researcher at OpenAI. It's a hologram piece that in which we used a GPT-3 algorithm to train it on the descriptions of all my works to date and all the essays that I wrote and published, and we generated works that I could potentially make in the future. And then I produced a hologram of these works. So these are the works of which I'm not the author, but somebody potentially could capitalize on them by using AI, just mining what is out there and online images of my work. And this is a very recent collaboration with John Gutak, who is also my collaborator, together with his wonderful students, postdoc students of John Gutak's lab, with Emily Mu and with Divya, who I mentioned earlier, and Hailey, and all the lab of the postdocs that worked on this project. This project is entitled Semiotic Life, and so here we analyzed also with artificial intelligence, with machine vision algorithms, thousands of photographs of bonsai juniper trees. And then they were all we trained the algorithm on all these trees, and then we started producing this kind of new images of bonsai trees of the same species, but somehow fusing all these images into one form. And I was thinking about how it's possible today synthetic biology is able to predict evolution of species in the future, and how AI, without doubt, will be soon used for it. So we in a way, fusing this an optimized juniper bonsai tree. And as you know, juniper trees, the bonsai trees are also an example where it's a form that was the first plant form that was curated or modified before genetics as a form, and it was sculpted, and it originates in the 6th century in China, and then was developed in Japan. But it's a first beginning of influencing the species by culture. And so then the form that we obtained, I entangled it, I 3D printed it, and you can see this the blue form, and it's entangled with the actual 75-year-old juniper tree of the same species. And now they will grow entangled, and we'll see how they evolve, how the real tree evolves in the future. And this brings me to the piece that is exhibited here. I have started the End of Signature series already in 2013, and I was thinking about transformations of the human, about collective intelligence, but also of this moment that we're witnessing when we can see the evolution of various forms of knowledge, and we can observe how certain forms of technology, of human technologies, are going out of use. I was thinking about the possibility that very soon we will witness the end of handwriting. Already now we're using handwriting less and less, and very soon it will be replaced by maybe just digital signatures, or fingerprinting, or iris scanning, or maybe even DNA samples. So definitely it's a technology that will go out of use. And so I was thinking about the end of handwriting and the role of technology in that process. And on the other hand, in the role of technology also in the obfuscation of authorship. very important for my practice and for my reflection about collective intelligence is thinking about the notion of individual authorship. And just the same way that we should abandon the paradigm of individualism that proved so catastrophic for our civilization, we should obviously also abandon the paradigm of individual singular authorship. We have never been individual. We have never been singular. And thinking about the history of human civilization, with the examples of the Bible or the mythologies, we realize that these monuments of human culture were created by thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, anonymous people who are circulating stories, and not by single individuals. Already we know that Homer probably was just a person that somehow wrote down stories that circulated, or maybe Homer didn't even exist. Similar for Shakespeare. We now know that Shakespeare's work probably, there were many people who contributed to what we now know as the oeuvre of Shakespeare. And so we have to change the way that we think about authorship in the arts, in culture, but also in science. And also, so here, for example, this is the first iteration that I did on the facade of the Guggenheim Museum. This is the end of signature, addressing both the end of handwriting and the end of individual authorship. Thinking about how actually individual authorship was a form, was a figure that was created only in order to better extract value from the dispersed network collective process, from the entire society, from the labor of the multitude. So here on the facade of the Guggenheim Museum in 2015, this iteration was based on collecting signatures of thousands of visitors of the museum. And I was thinking about how today, in a way, we can update the famous sentence of Marcel Duchamp, who said that the viewer completes the artwork. Well, today, the viewer is completing the value of the artwork, because through photographing artworks at museums, galleries, and by circulating them on social media, we obviously are contributing to their value. And so at the Guggenheim, this project had this the meaning of this work was about this kind of collective graffiti and how the visitors certainly contribute to what is produced at this institution. This is a collective signature of all the employees of the Cleveland Museum of Art. Everyone from the guards and the cleaning staff to the curators, director, and board members. Everybody who contributes the cultural capital of this institution. Here at top of the public housing in Utrecht, all 1,000 people that live in this building. And finally, we're here, and these are the two signatures at Kendall Square, a commission for the MIT List Visual Arts Center and Kendall Square. These two signatures were created in collaboration with the CSAIL PhD students of Professor John Gutak and Professor John Gutak, and they are all present here. So Katie, Luis, Divya, Shanmugan, Jose Javier Gonzalez Ortiz, and Professor John Gutak, and I'm really thankful for this collaboration. One of the signatures was created by collecting signatures of scientists and academics who worked at MIT from the beginning of MIT till today. So actually some of the signatures of people who worked here are stored in the MIT archives, and we were able to access them. And we also collected signatures of people who work here currently, academics, scientists, PhD students, researchers, postdocs. And we collected thousands of signatures, and one of the signatures, the one on the right, the white one, is representing the collective signature of all this academic and scientific employees and students and researchers of MIT. And the signature on the left is based on signatures that we collected from the Cambridge community of people who live or work in this area. So working together with Professor John Gutak and his PhD students, we used neural networks, GAN, which is a form of artificial intelligence, algorithms. They were used to, we trained these algorithms using the data set with all the signatures that we collected. And then after the algorithm was trained, we produced new signatures, which in a way contain something of every single signature that was contributing to this data set. And then we produced these new signatures that there are, in a certain way, a fusion of all the signatures that were given to us by, in one case, the academics and scientists, the other case, the community of Cambridge. And so I'm thinking about these forms as, on the one hand, as you can see, this is the one on this building, and this is the one on the other building, which is the biology and tech building. And the other one is animated, and it's actually perpetually signing and erasing itself like a palimpsest, as you're going to see. So it's, and I am interested in evolving objects of knowledge, evolving forms, and the ways that things crystallize, but also things the way in which things dissipate, how various communities form, how revolutions form or social movements. And so collective intelligence is perfect to study because it's an object in flux. It's a form in constant evolution, in motion. And I wanted these pieces to also show that perpetual evolution of a form. And in a way, these pieces, because they are using the technology, the relatively old technology of writing, of handwriting, over time, my idea for this work is to also evolve, because the way that we're going to see these works is probably going to change. Already in about 10 years, I believe, the handwriting will no longer be in use, and they will just be these signatures will be fossils of technology no longer in use. And so I'm interested in how a form can also evolve, like a little bit like a time capsule, can change over time. And so that's why this evolution of forms was very important for me. And I also wanted to relate to questions of circulations of energy in society. As you could see earlier with my pieces, conversions, I used social energies that today are mined in a way. They are mined like oil and gas by corporations and governments. And so I wanted to have this like living energy circulating in a piece, which actually this, in a certain way, this piece makes it palpable and visible. And I wanted to also think about social movements or people supporting one cause or communities as collective persons or as superorganisms, and how we can develop collective signatures for them. And maybe even to imagine a graphologist studying a collective signature that could be produced the way that graphologists study our handwriting and can say something about a person looking at their signature. The signature is the most individual thing that we have right now, but it may change over time. And so I purposefully created forms that they themselves are in perpetual motion, and they are erasing themselves and signing and re-signing, and they will change and evolve over time as their meaning changes. The other form, this form, as you will notice, has this subtle, is blinking subtly once per minute, so it kind of is alive another way. And I want to think about artworks as living organisms that are evolving with time. Obviously, they change. And I, in my work, I'm very inspired by the writings of Bernard Stiegler and Yuk Hui, who have thought about and kind of developed further the thought of Gilbert Simondon about technical objects. But where Stiegler and Hui brought it more recently is that technical objects today, they not only can be updated over time by their designers, by their authors, but they can also be updated and changed by the communities or crowds of their users. And thinking about it, I've been thinking about how artworks should also be produced differently, distributed differently, and how the profits from the artworks should be redistributed. And so this is why I create forms that are crowdsourced to non-human and human communities, societies or colonies, and this is why these forms are evolving. And I'm thinking about forms that in the future, maybe artworks will be not produced by single individuals, but they will be results of complex collaborative efforts. Just like today, Nobel Prizes are given more and more often to teams of scientists or to 2 or 3 scientists who worked on the same project in different parts of the world. And thinking along these lines, I'm thinking that maybe in the future, artworks will be produced like they were in the past, or like the memes, the internet memes are circulating, and they don't have a single author. They emerge out of the network of various internet users. And I'm thinking about forms that could in the future also be evolving. They are not just going to be dead, static forms at museums, but they will evolve together with changes in society. And that was my ambition with this project, and I hope it will evolve and its meaning will evolve with time. Thank you.